Hi everyone and welcome to a new video. In this one, I will cover how to create a bootable macOS USB drive from Windows to install macOS or run recovery for both supported and unsupported Apple hardware. This is something I wanted to cover for quite a while, but never managed to get to it. So if you would be in a situation where you no longer have access to macOS, for example if your drive failed, you replaced it, or your installation got corrupted and can no longer boot, or simply because you would like to install macOS on non-official hardware and you do have a Windows-based machine available, you came to the right place. If you still would have access to a macOS-based machine, creating that same bootable macOS installation media from macOS itself is fairly easy. You just need to download the installer from the App Store and then run the create install media script from that application's contents. I covered this in detail in a previous video. And in case you would be looking to do the opposite, that is to create a bootable USB installation media for Windows from macOS instead, I did cover this as well before, so I'll put a card to that video here if you would need this. For this video, we will focus on getting that USB drive created without the need for a macOS-based machine or any Apple hardware. I will do all of the steps in the video on this Dell Optiplex, which has a fresh installation of Windows 11. Once completed, we will then test the USB drive on a supported machine and on an unsupported machine. As I wanted to avoid both using paid tools like Transmac or UUByte or using pre-created images, I decided to go for a slightly different approach here. Instead of directly creating that USB drive from Windows, we'll first get the macOS Catalina virtual machine up and running in VirtualBox and use that to create the installation media. This approach does add quite a bit of steps, but it gives you a lot of flexibility in return. One large advantage is that this will also allow you to create a USB drive for unsupported hardware, and you can run macOS only tools there as well as much as you need. From a high level, the process will look as follows. I did cover these steps in detail on my blog if you would be interested, for which I will provide a link in the description. But as the first 4 steps require quite a bit of manual work, including multiple downloads and running commands in command prompt, I decided to make some scripts and share these on GitHub to simplify the process for you. In the first part, we need to perform some preparation steps to get a virtual machine ready that will be able to run macOS Catalina on top of our Windows-based system. This is exactly what the 4 scripts that I mentioned will be doing. I'm going for a virtual machine with macOS Catalina, which works perfectly fine for our purpose. And just to be clear, that doesn't mean you will not be able to create installation media for newer versions like Sonoma, Ventura, or the latest Sequoia. To start, we need to download the scripts from GitHub. So navigate with your browser to the GitHub page, for which I also provided the link in the description, and click on the green code button, then choose Download Zip. Once the file is downloaded, navigate to your Downloads folder and extract the zip file by right-clicking on it and choose for Extract All, followed by clicking on Extract in the dialog that comes up. Once the files get extracted, open the displayed folder called macOSVM_VirtualBox_Windows-main, and as you can see, this contains those 4 batch files for the first 4 steps. You can leave the files here or move them to another location, as this requires around 35 GB of free space on the location from where you will execute these scripts. The first script, that is called step1_download_basesystem.dmg.bat, will, as the name suggests, download a current basesystem.dmg file for macOS Catalina from Apple. We'll do that with a tool called gipmacOS, but all of that will be taken care of by the script. So, to start, simply execute that first batch file by double-clicking on it. If you would see a Microsoft Defender Smart Screen dialog like this one, click on More Info, then click on Run Anyway. As you can see, and as mentioned, this script will download gipmacOS, install Python if that's needed, and then run gipmacOS to find the latest URL and eventually download a basesystem.dmg file from Apple for Catalina. At the end of the script, you will then see the location of the downloaded image, which got renamed to basesystem_catalina.dmg. This step is complete, so you can now just press any key or close the dialog and move to the next step. In step 2, we'll use the image which we just downloaded in step 1 and convert it into a format that is usable for VirtualBox. Before we can do that, the script will install QEMU, which we need in order to accomplish this. Again, simply execute the batch script, this time called step2 underscore convert DMG to vmdk.bat by double-clicking on it. Same as with the first file, if you get a notification from Microsoft Defender Smart Screen, click on More Info, then click on Run Anyway. Once the script downloaded QEMU for Windows, it will install this and it will ask for your permission to do so with a UAC dialog. Simply click Yes here. If all goes well, the script will end as follows, and again will let you know the location of that converted file in VMDK format this time. As with the first script, you can now just press any key or close the dialog and move to the next step, which is step 3. Here, we'll run a script called step3 underscore install virtualbox.bat. And as the name again suggests, this will install the prerequisites for VirtualBox, VirtualBox itself, and the required extension pack which we need in order to run macOS virtual machines on it. Same as with the previous steps, simply execute that third script by double-clicking on it and choose for more info, then click on Run Anyway if asked by Microsoft Defender Smart Screen. And as with the previous step, you will be asked multiple times to confirm changes to your machine with a user account control dialog box where each time you should click on Yes. Once that script completes, again, you can press any key or just close the command prompt window and proceed to the last step, which is step 4. In step 4, we'll create a virtual machine in VirtualBox and configure it exactly to run macOS. This includes detecting if you're running on an Intel-based or AMD-based system, as this requires different configuration, and it will also link the earlier prepared base system underscore Catalina VMDK file to that same virtual machine. Again, just double-click on the fourth script, which is called step4 underscore create macOS VM.bat, and choose for more info, then click on Run Anyway if that gets asked by Microsoft Defender Smart Screen. This script should run pretty fast, and if all goes well, you should end with an output looking similar to this, where it confirms a virtual machine called macOS 1 was created. Once this completed, we can press any key to open the VirtualBox GUI, where we will run the macOS Catalina installation. Then we can close that command prompt window. So, at this point, all preparations are done to run macOS Catalina in a VirtualBox virtual machine. The last part of step 4 should have opened the VirtualBox user interface. But if that's not the case for you or you closed the command prompt window before it was able to do so, you can of course start it manually. In VirtualBox, make sure that the newly created macOS 1 VM is selected. In here we can see it's configured for macOS and is already linked to that downloaded and converted base system file for Catalina. Let's go ahead and start the virtual machine from here now. After a bit of patience, you will see a lot of text scrolling by. These are the boot messages in verbose mode for macOS. And if all goes well, after some time, you should also briefly see the Apple logo with a progress bar, and eventually you should end up in macOS Recovery, where the first step is to select a language. Choose the language of your choice and press the next button at the bottom of the window. We're now in macOS Recovery, and before we can install Catalina, we will need to prepare the virtual disk by creating a file system on it. So from the macOS Recovery menu, choose for Disk Utility first. In Disk Utility, first click on View, Show All Devices, and then select the first VBox hard disk on the left side. This one should be roughly 40 GB in size, so better to double check. Then choose Erase in the top menu, give the drive a name, I chose for Catalina VDisk, and leave the rest of the options as they are, and click on Erase. After a bit of waiting, the preparation of the drive should be complete and you are good to close Disk Utility and proceed further with the Catalina installation. So go ahead and this time select Reinstall macOS from the Recovery menu. In the next screen, click Continue. Then accept the license terms and eventually select where to install macOS. This should show you the name which you just gave to the virtual drive, in my case Catalina VDisk, and then click Install. From here, your patience will be tested, as this process can take quite some time. All required files will be downloaded and installed on that new virtual drive in the macOS 1 virtual machine. For me, all of this took almost a full hour, but I'm doing this on a fairly old 4th Gen Intel Core CPU with a regular SATA SSD, so that might have played a role. If all goes well, you should eventually end up in the welcome screen. This is exactly the same as you would see when doing a fresh installation on real Apple hardware. Just click yourself through the steps in the wizard here. Start by selecting your location, language, skip the Apple ID login, accept the terms and conditions, create an account and set a password, and then complete the rest of the questions. After completing all of these, you should eventually end up on the desktop of your virtual machine, which is now running macOS Catalina. From here on, you can use this virtual machine as macOS would be running on real hardware. And although this took us quite a bit of extra steps, this now gives us the ability to create installation media on a USB drive, but also to prepare specific macOS-only tools in this VM if this would be required. The next step, now that we have macOS running in this virtual machine, is to download the macOS installer of the version we would like to have. To do so, simply open the App Store on the virtual machine, which you can find in the dock with the blue icon. Search for the macOS version of choice. I'll go for the latest one, which is called macOS Sequoia, and click on View for that same macOS version in the results. After clicking on that View button, just click on Get to start the download of the macOS installer and confirm that you want to download this in Software Update. Again, you'll need to be patient here as the download is roughly 15 GB in size, which can take quite some time, mainly depending on the speed of your internet connection. Once that is complete, the Install macOS Sequoia application will automatically launch on the virtual machine, but we can just close it as we will only use it as a source for the installation media. If you open Finder and navigate to the Applications folder now, we can see the installer application which we will use in the next steps to create the bootable USB installation media. At this point, it's time to connect our USB drive to the virtual machine. As we want to let the virtual machine have access to our USB drive, after inserting it in our Windows-based machine, we need to link it to the VM instead. To do so, in the virtual machines window in VirtualBox, go to Devices, USB, and select your USB drive from the list. The name of the device depends on the type and vendor of USB drive, so this can be different. Before we can now go ahead and start to write files to that drive, it's a good idea to make sure it's well prepared. So, to make sure there aren't any weird partitions or leftovers from previous use, we'll erase the drive and create the required scheme and partition on it. Similarly, as we did during the Catalina installation, we can do this with Disk Utility. So, start Disk Utility by going to Finder, Applications, Utilities, Disk Utility. In the meanwhile, we can also see our USB drive from macOS. Now, in Disk Utility, again click on View, Show All Devices, and then find your USB drive on the left side. Make sure to click on the device itself, not the volume on the device, and click on Erase. In the dialog that comes up, provide a name. I chose for Sequoia USB. Select macOS Extended as format and GUID partition map as scheme. Then click Erase. After this process completes, the USB drive is ready and we can close Disk Utility and move on to the next step. At this point, we will make use of that new application on the virtual machine called Install macOS and the version of choice. There is no need to launch that installer application as we don't want to install this on the virtual machine itself. Instead, we need to start Terminal by going to Utilities, Terminal, and enter the following command. So, I'm starting with sudo /applications/install macOS sequoia.app /contents/resources /create install media, then a space --volume space/volumes and the name of our USB drive, Sequoia USB. Each time after typing the first letters, you can use a tab key to complete the rest of the text to make sure you didn't make any mistakes. Make sure you replace the version with the correctly downloaded version of your choice and do the same with the volume name which you use as a destination. Make sure it matches with what you entered in Disk Utility when we erased the USB drive. In my case, again, this was Sequoia USB. After entering the command with the correct values, press Enter. This will ask for your password. Here, just type in the password, which you will not see appear on the screen, and press Enter. Confirm that you are good to erase the contents of the USB drive by entering Y, and allow terminal to access that USB drive. Again, once more, this will take quite some time as all installation files need to be copied over to that USB drive. The utility will also take care of making the USB drive bootable. Right now, if you plan to use the USB drive for a system that officially supports the macOS release that you downloaded and used to create the bootable drive, then at this point, you can safely remove the USB drive in the virtual machine, and we can use it to perform a fresh installation or recover a device which has issues booting into macOS. If on the other hand, you plan to use this drive to install macOS on a system that is no longer supporting this latest release, follow the instructions in the next chapter to prepare and install OpenCore on the drive. Before that, I'll go ahead and test if we can use this USB drive now to boot on an M1-based MacBook Air, which officially supports that version which I chose, macOS Sequoia. For silicon-based machines, we can do that by holding down the power button for 20 seconds with the USB drive plugged in. As you can see, this brings up the startup options, and we get to see Install macOS Sequoia, which comes from the USB drive in the list here. Let's select it and see if we can at least boot into recovery and start the installation. Looks like this works exactly as expected. Great to see. Now, to allow this USB drive for usage and installation on unsupported systems, as mentioned in the beginning of the video, one large advantage of going through the hassle of setting up this Catalina VM is that you have the freedom and flexibility to run tools and applications for macOS as well. So if, for example, you want to use a USB drive that we prepared to install a macOS version that is newer than what your Apple or other system officially supports, you can use OCLP to build OpenCore specifically for the system where you plan to use the USB drive. If you need more details about this process, as I will try to keep it short for this video, you can refer to an earlier video I made on installing macOS on unsupported hardware, for which I'll provide a link in the description. First of all, we will need to download the latest version of OpenCore Legacy Patcher. To do so, navigate to the releases page of OCLP on GitHub using Safari. Again, you can find the link for that in the description. As you will see, since the Safari version that comes with Catalina is pretty outdated by now, there are some issues rendering the GitHub page. Scroll down a bit and on the right side of the page, click on the latest release, which was 2.1.2 at the time of creating this video. Since Safari is not able to render the assets at the bottom of the latest releases properly, we'll need to change the URL to access those. While you are on the page of the latest release, simply change the URL by replacing tag with expanded assets. This should allow Safari to bring up a list of assets for that latest release. From here, we need to download OpenCore Patcher GUI.app.zip. Once downloaded, go to your Downloads folder in Finder and start the application. When asked, provide the password of the macOS user in the virtual machine. For some reason, I needed to start the application twice before it would actually launch, but eventually I got to OpenCore Legacy Patcher. As you can see, the option Build and Install OpenCore, which you actually need, is grayed out. This is because OCLP does not know the model of Mac I'm running this on. It looks kind of strange here, and that's because we're running macOS in a virtual machine. Now, to build this for specific hardware, we need to go to Settings and then set the target model to the matching model identifier. For example, my goal is to try this on a MacBook Air early 2015, which corresponds with model identifier MacBook Air 7,2. Now, after clicking Return, Build and Install OpenCore became available. So let's choose that option in the menu. Straight away, OCLP will start to build OpenCore specifically for the target model, which we selected in the settings. And then once this is done, it will ask you if you would like to install the build of OpenCore to a disk. Click on Install to Disk here. In the next step, select your USB drive from the list. Then choose the EFI partition that is on the drive as a destination for OpenCore. And after a bit of patience, if all goes well, OCLP will copy the necessary files to the USB drive, and it can now be used to install an unsupported version of macOS to the unsupported model which we selected. As we did the test already on a supported model, let's go ahead now and do the same for an unsupported model and check if the USB drive actually works here. So I'm inserting it in a MacBook Air early 2015, power it on, and here I need to hold the Option key in order to bring up the boot menu. We can already see the USB drive appear here, that's already good. And then as this machine won't be able to run Sequoia directly, we first need to select EFI boot to start OpenCore from the USB drive. And then in OpenCore, we can select install macOS Sequoia, which also comes from the same location. And as with the supported hardware, this also allows us, although not super visible in the video, to start macOS recovery and start the installation of Sequoia. Hopefully, this will help you to reinstall or play around with macOS on your supported and unsupported hardware. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you have liked this video, and if you did, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Let me know how this goes for you, or if you have any questions in the comments, and make sure to subscribe and enable notifications if you like these kind of videos. Thanks again, and hope to see you back here soon.